What is up, Las Vegas and friends of Sin City? Thank you guys for tuning in to the Guestless Podcast YouTube channel. I'm going to make this intro message quick and brief so that we could get on to the show. But since the inception of the Guestless Podcast, I've seen incredible amount of growth. The audience members have been deriving value and people are enjoying the show. So we are taking the show to the next level of its evolution. There will now be a visual component to every single episode, whether it will be in-person conversations or Zoom and video conferencing conversations. I just want to thank you guys because this has been an incredible journey and we're just getting started. So in light of that, please make sure that you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you guys like and comment and share all the videos so that everybody else in the city of Las Vegas and fans of Vegas can enjoy the conversations with the innovative individuals and industry leaders of our town. Also, make sure that you guys are subscribed to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform, whether that is Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, Google. Everyone's jumping into the game. It's an incredible time to be along with this journey in the podcast space, and I'm glad that you guys are here with me. Please feel free to reach out moving forward, and let's get on to the show. What is up, Las Vegas and friends of Sin City? This is Jake Gallen, and we are back with the Guestless Podcast. And today on the show, I have Danielle McCafferty. She is the founder of Danielle McCafferty Yoga and the McCafferty Insurance Agency. Quite an entrepreneur and
Yes,
Las Vegas
sir.
born and raised. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm glad that we could finally have this discussion after our parents had known each other for such a long time, and Danielle's mother was my hairstylist for the majority of my life. So me and Danielle have had this kind of bond for such a long time.
Yeah, like 20-ish years, and then we're both born the same year, kind of had similar experiences growing up, and now here we are.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. So I have the big question. You obviously you are yoga certified. You do all this yoga stuff, and you own your own insurance agency. Did you start Did you start yoga because the insurance agency is very stressful, as I hear?
Yes and no. So I've been in insurance since I was 14. I started at a little shop down the street from my house. And so I started really young, just shredding papers, walking dogs, what kids do when they start their first jobs. And then when I graduated from college, I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Like, I'm lacking this substance, like something is missing. So I was like, oh, I'll just try yoga teacher training, more so just for me, because I was like, I want to get better at yoga. And then I've always been an introvert. I've always been really shy. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to teach when I graduate. I'm not going to teach. Like, that's not my thing. And then I started teaching and I just absolutely fell in love with it. So I was like, okay, well, there we go. And then it does help manage the stress with being in a very, stressful sales job. So yeah, both. Yes, give and take on both.
Yeah, it was a little bit of the chicken or the egg scenario, which I was curious about. But before we get into both of those, let's just build some context for the listeners of who Danielle McCafferty is. So just give us an explanation of your backstory, who you are, how you ended up in Vegas.
So I'm actually born and raised here in Vegas. My family, my mom's side is from Oregon and my dad's side is from California. And my mom and dad met in high school. They were actually next door neighbors. And so they were friends for a really long time. And then when my dad was in college, they decided to start a relationship, and there's me. I obviously have been here forever, but I do like to travel a lot. I graduated from CSN High School in 2010. So that's college graduate, dual credit program. And then my home school was Cimarron. So I've been all around the block. I've lived in every part of Vegas. I lived on the east side, like Maryland and Swenson for a really long time, right by my mom's old shop, probably where you and your dad went to,
Yeah.
across from the Liberace Museum. I've lived on the south side. I've lived in Northtown. Now I live in Summerlin. So, the glow up is real.
A true Las Vegan.
Yeah.
I respect that. It's funny. The Liberace Museum, that's where I had my antique store at first, literally reminiscent. I would always look at that old shop and just see all those memories of, I forget what was the shop called? Do you remember?
Your shop?
No, your mother's hairstylist shop.
Oh, was it Cutter's Way?
Cutter's Way.
I
That's
think
what
it
it
was.
was.
I think it was Cutter's Way. Yeah, right across from there.
The nostalgia. So tell me then, how does somebody end up
And then the owners passed away, so she had to move up.
Respect that. So
Was
tell
that?
me, what were you saying? So
Oh no, we just echoed over.
That's so one downside of doing video conferencing is there's always like a 1 or 2 second delay. It's very tough. But so tell me this then. You've been all over Vegas. You went to CSN High School. You went to UNLV for a little bit. You're in criminal justice. How does somebody end up in the insurance agency?
So when I first started in insurance, it was very stressful. I was a little kid and I didn't know really what was going on. And of course, in insurance, everybody's pissed about everything all the time. So I was like, I'm never going to do this. I'm never, ever going to do this when I grow up. And so when I got out of college, my background is in criminalistics or crime scene investigation. I was an explorer with Metro for quite a few years. So I had a lot of experience with dead people. I had a lot of experience with crime scenes, and just looking at the pros and cons of each profession, I decided that insurance was right for me. And there was kind of a critical turning point that made me decide I wanted to be in insurance. Because when I first got into it, it was like, yeah, it's a job, whatever, you're not really making a difference for people. And then I had a client that got in a really bad car accident, but she wasn't supposed to switch over to me for a while, but the underwriters messed up the application. So she signed on a month earlier on accident. And she was like, it's fine, whatever, it's a month, like, no worries, I'll just cancel my other insurance. She ended up getting into a really bad accident on Christmas Eve, and her husband passed away, and she broke both her legs, both her arms, all her teeth, her collarbones. She was in the hospital for a year and a half. And my insurance policy, because I don't just sell the cheapest rate, I make sure that you're covered correctly. I make sure that there's no holes. I make sure that your family's protected regardless. And she got paid out $895,000 opposed to the zero that she would have gotten on her previous policy. So I was like, okay, like I am actually making a difference and people are actually benefiting from this, and I can do a lot of good in the world. So I decided from that point, I was like, okay, it's not just a car salesman or, the sleazy kind of thing. Like there's actually merit to it. So it's kind of this learning process, even for me, through my preconceived notions. And that's when I started to pivot my business too. I made it more of a consultation business. I'm a professional helping other professionals opposed to just selling you the cheapest possible insurance rate that you possibly can get.
When you think of insurance, it's just immediate, like your heart drops, headache. Anytime you have to deal with them, you call somebody and then they're like, no, you have to talk to this person, agency or insurance. And the insurance is divvied up into multiple different industries. There's never really a blanket coverage insurance. So a lot of people, it's just very stressful just moving towards it. So I think that, it's
and
very...
It leaves like a bad taste in people's mouths. Like they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with another insurance agent. It's the same thing with car lots. Like, oh, I don't want to deal with them because they're a pain in the ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I want, like, my catchphrase is always like, make adulting easy, or like cover your ass kind of thing. Like, it's not, I'll make your experience an actual experience, not like I'm trying to sell you. If you don't like my rates, you don't like my rates, but at least you got the coverage that you need, like you can go wherever else, but now you have the knowledge and you're empowered to make that decision for yourself. So I'm not making decisions for you. But if I'm like, hey, you've got 2 young kids, you should really consider life insurance, or you should really consider upping the liability on your vehicles, like they at least know that now. And it's within their power to make that decision and not mine. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more of like an empowerment education thing that I've turned it into, opposed to just sales, sales, sales all the time.
Interesting. So I know, like I said earlier, that insurance, it's really partitioned up into very like specialized insurance um, coverage. Is there a reason why they do it and that it's not just like a blanket insurance that covers everything?
Yeah, so they always call it diversifying their risk. So they don't want all the risk in one area. So say you're an attorney, right? Not that much risk unless somebody walks into your office and breaks their ankle, something like that. Obviously, like malpractice and stuff like that's different. But for a demolition company, there's a lot more risk. So the way that insurance companies do it, they like keep a pocket of money over here so that they can pay their claims out. And so they only allow for that much each year. And that's why rates fluctuate, because their loss ratios aren't fantastic that year. So they increase your rates so that they can pay your claims. And then the people that insure the demolition companies make sure there's a bigger pocket of money to pay out, because generally like auto and home insurance, they're not paying out a whole ton of money. Like you have a fire in your house, knock on wood, it's like $50,000, $75,000, or up to 500,000. Where in comparison, where you're covering these high risk businesses, it's like millions, 20, 30, $50 million to cover a claim. So it's all about that, diversifying their risk to make sure that they can pay their claims out and still be profitable, obviously, to pay, me.
Yeah, capitalism at the end of the day. I'm just going to use a quick
Yeah.
example that I know these kind of scenarios, the one-off scenarios, are the situations that kind of leave a bad stain on people. There was a famous
Yeah.
pizza shop that was across from UNLV when I was there. It was called What's Up Pizza. And, they were insured. They lasted, I think, like 25 years. And they had like a flood that just happened, like the first time it's ever happened down in that area for 25 years. And it ended up crippling their business.
Yeah.
And their complaint when they came out in the news was like, oh, our insurance never told us that we weren't covered in this. And so it ended up getting like a lot of flack on the insurance company. But at the end of the day, the pizza company didn't survive because they didn't have flood insurance. But who would know to have that kind of situation in Vegas? It's so rare. Would that, is that situation more of a lack on the insurance agent, or would it just be cut, or is it more of a situation of the company not properly insuring themselves and coverage?
So I always say it's a mix of the two. You need to have a relationship. You're pretty much married to your insurance agent at that time. So you need to have like proper communication and assess your risk. Down on Flamingo, Maryland Parkway, that flood was what? We were in college in what, 2011, 2012?
Yeah, it was literally
I remember
right around
that flood. Yeah, I remember that flood. It was horrendous, and so many businesses got flooded. But they're in the 100-year flood zone. All those businesses are. So like flood insurance and natural disaster insurance is provided by the government. It's not provided by individual companies. So it needed to be that conversation between the business owner and the insurance agent. Like, hey, there might not ever be a flood here, but there might be a flood here, so it's kind of this, you can't ever force them. Well, some of them can, you have to have homeowners insurance, whatever, but you can't ever force a business to purchase insurance that you're suggesting, because then you come off, pushy or what have you. But it needs to have that education piece. Like, this is not covered, like if there's a wildfire, you're not covered. If there's a flood, that's not covered, things like that. So it's definitely a mix of the two. It's kind of like when you have a bad divorce. It's like you can't blame one person or the other. So that's how I always describe it, because people generally come to me disgruntled when they're switching insurance companies. There's a thread of discontent. So they're like, oh, well, it's the insurance agent's fault. Everyone wants to pass blame, but that's where I'm kind of filling in that hole in the industry with the education portion. Because, yeah, you might not ever have a flood, but you might, So it's that educated empowerment piece that I've been talking about.
It's good. And so one more situation, and this is what's most popular right now, is riot insurance or the protest insurance. Is this a specialized type of insurance, or is this covered by some other coverage?
It depends. So car insurance generally covers vandalism. So that is included in a riot. Same thing with homeowners insurance. They'll cover vandalism, and they also cover arson and induced fires or electrical fires, things like that. So those are included. Business insurance, it depends on the carrier. And that's, again, where you have to have this trust and this relationship with your insurance agent, so that if anything happens, who would have ever expected that we would have had these riots in 2020? Not a whole lot of people. So insurance is kind of that, like maybe shit'll happen, maybe it won't, but I want to make sure that I'm protected in any event. So insurance companies, some of them do cover riots. I know some of them are catching a lot of grief because they have not covered riots. Mm-hmm. My company specifically has rolled out extra endorsements to cover riots, because if there's no small businesses insured through us, then we really don't have the relationship. Like my company is very boutique. My company caters to a very specific type of clientele. So if we don't have those, we have no business. So like I said, it's this like marriage that you have to be educated, you have to be happy, and it has to be within your budget. So yeah, insurance companies are catching some bad waves right now, but it's definitely, you need that relationship so you can understand your coverage. Because a lot of people, even with just a simple auto policy, will just buy the cheapest policy. And then they get into a car accident and they're like, what? I didn't know I didn't have rental car, or my car's not covered, or, my medical bills, like what's going on? So it's definitely, I always call it like, it's part of your adulting checklist, like taxes, check, insurance, check, like pay your rent, check, So it's definitely all about education. Because there's a lot to know when becoming your own business owner. There's a lot of, it's a very steep learning curve with business licenses and insurance and permits and whatever else, depending on your business.
Yeah. So you said that you have your insurance agency is a little bit more of a boutique insurance, and you cater towards a specific client. What kind of client does your business bring in?
So we more so cater to, insurance companies do use risk scores, which is like a combination of your credit score, your shopping history, just like your electric bill does, or when you're getting a car loan, things like that, to determine what kind of risk you are. So we mostly cater to people with a higher credit score, lower claims, business owners, especially. We have great business owner companies, and I'm starting to expand a couple different options for people, but that's generally what we focus on. Me, myself, I love working with new families, because they have a baby and they're like, maybe I should, get life insurance. Maybe I should have car insurance. Like, what is homeowners insurance? So I love working with them and kind of walking them through that checklist and being like, okay, this is what you need. Let me see your budget, and then we'll work from there. So we more so cater to people that aren't slamming into things. 16-year-old boys probably aren't our thing. I usually send them someplace else for a couple years so that they can get it out of their system, and then they come back. So yeah.
Hey, I'm 28 and I'm still running into things all the time. I actually just got into my first ever car accident last year, first time ever. And I had Allstate, and I was fully covered, and that was the first time I actually had to go through the whole insurance experience, and it actually went pretty well, and it wasn't as much of a headache as I thought it was going to be. But that's probably because it was my first time. Like you said, if you're a repeat offender or your repeat customer, will say as that, then they probably give you a little bit more head shaking, and maybe a little bit more to the bottom of the wait list.
And your rates go up. significantly. So you're out a ton of money. Yeah. And then, I mean, you pay insurance for those things. So that's what I always tell people. Like, people call me. I had a client the other day. He just wrecked his Land Rover on the 215. So, you know, that's like $120,000 car. So he's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't even see there was like a piece of metal in the road. And I was like, don't stress. Like, that's literally why you pay insurance. Like, that is why you chose me, so that when you get into an accident, I'm going to be the one that's like, all right, Rodney, this is what we're going to do. Like, here's the step by step. Make sure that this is taken care of. This is taken care of. So it's definitely a horrible experience to get into a car accident. I don't wish that on anybody, but having the right insurance company and the right policy with the right coverages definitely relieves a lot of headache.
Can you explain to me too what exactly a deductible is? I know that's a word that gets thrown around pretty often, and especially my parents and back in the day, whenever there's any sort of insurance, they're like, we don't want to pay the deductible. And deductible, it seems like what a lot of older generations, the word that they like to kind of harp on. So
Yeah.
Can you kind of give an explanation of what that is?
Definitely. So there's two different types of deductibles in car insurance. There's comprehensive and collision. And collision is if you hit anything or anything hits you. And so you're moving, it's a collision. Comprehensive is literally anything else. So your car gets vandalized, it spontaneously combusts, you know, it falls into a river, whatever. Comprehensive kind of covers everything else. So say that you're in a car accident, just a little fender bender, and the damages on your car is like $5,000. And your deductible is $500. So there's $5,000 worth of damage, $500 deductible. Most of the time you pay that $500 and then the insurance company fixes the rest of it. Okay. But if your car is like totaled, so say your car is like $20,000, $30,000, they'll just deduct your deductible from the total amount of damages. So if your car is worth $28,000, they're going to give you $2,700 or $27,500. And they'll just take your deductible out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's more so it's the lapse it's the lapse in coverage, correct?
No. So the deductible is just when you get into an accident, it's your part of like paying it forward. So you can choose a higher deductible, like $2,000, and that makes your policy less expensive. But if you choose a lower deductible, it makes your policy more expensive. So a different example would be your windshield cracks. Your windshield just busts on the 215 and you drive a Tesla because your podcast takes off and, you know, you're, super famous. So you're driving down the 215 and a rock hits your windshield. Tesla windshields are right around $2,000, $2,500 because of all the sensors. Same things with like Audi and Land Rover and stuff like that. So you would pay your $500 deductible and then they would just fix the rest.
Okay, actually that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. So outside of car insurance, what would you say is the most underappreciated insurance that actually gets a lot of attention and a lot of clients towards?
Umbrella insurance. Not a lot of people have heard about umbrella insurance, but it's definitely one of the most underutilized coverages and policies out there. It's just for liability coverage. So it's mostly for if you get sued or something like that. So say you have your house right over here, then you have your car over here, and you have high limits, but you're like, oh, like it's not high enough. I'm an attorney. Like, I know what kind of claims get paid out on like a dog bite or if someone breaks their leg at my house. Umbrella insurance goes above and beyond both of them, literally like an umbrella over the two. And so you get into a car accident, someone sues you. It's like, we're going above the $500,000 threshold. That umbrella protects you. So it's up here. And then your assets are up here. So it's like car and house, umbrella, assets. So no one can really get to that top tier to sue you or like garnish your wages, things like that. So the umbrella coverage is just that extra buffer over your current coverages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, especially if you're somebody who's investing, or you're necessarily your savings is invested into assets and you don't just hold it in necessarily dollars. That is the biggest fear when you get sued,
Right.
is that they're going to come and pretty much bankrupt you for everything.
And I've seen that happen because people don't want to pay the policy, or they just are ill-informed or something along those lines. And generally, insurance umbrella policies are not expensive at all. They're usually $300 to $500 a year for an extra $1 million worth of coverage. So it's like $300 versus $1 million, you know, and then you don't have to deal with the headache of getting sued. And I had this one claim a couple years ago where a little boy was at an open house and there was a bird bath in the backyard, and he just pulled it onto himself and broke his face. So the current owner of that house, even though they were selling it, had to pay out, I think it was $2.2 million for reconstruction and things like that. And it's just as simple as a bird bath. Like, who would have ever thought that that would have, you know, hurt somebody?
That's crazy, especially in America. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's unfortunate that that happens to the little boy, but people will come after you for any reason. And there's a lot of
Anything.
there's people who have good intentions, but there's a lot of people that have bad intentions as well, that will go purposely get into fender benders so that they can go claim that on insurance. Is
Oh yeah, and Nevada is like one of the most litigious states in the entire U.S.
interesting. Do you
I mean,
guys?
all of us Las Vegans know Glenn Lerner's number by heart. I mean, if that's not telling, I don't know what is.
So true. It's literally ingrained into our brain. So one more question
Mm-hmm.
about insurance, and I'm curious about life insurance, because this is probably the one that gets the worst rap from people. And now, before I
Yeah.
moved into this recent complex, I had two different people in the matter of a week come up to my door and ask me to buy life insurance, and that the stigma around that is
Mm-hmm.
terrible, because it's very pushy. What is the reason to
Oh
have
yeah.
life insurance, and why do they have to go door to door to sell it instead of people actually coming to them?
So life insurance has a bad rap, just like you said. It has a lot of different facets than just death benefit. There's a lot of different moving parts in life insurance, and that would probably be like a whole other hour for me to go into depth in each one. But the main purpose of life insurance is to make sure that your family's taken care of if anything happens to you. So I have an example. It's really sad. I had a dentist, and he was 52, and he got life insurance when he was like 23. He got like a $500,000 policy when he was in dental school, and he was like, "Yeah, whatever. Like, it's just a little policy." He ended up getting diagnosed with testicular cancer, and his insurance paid out the entire $500,000 before he passed. Because on some policies, there's chronic illness riders and things like that will pay it off so that you can spend time with your family and not burden them with your debt. So that's basically what it is, because dying is expensive. It's very expensive. The average funeral, even if you're just going to get cremated, is about $7,000. And that's not counting if you move from state to state. My great grandma passed away last year, and her funeral in total was $78,000, because we had to transfer her from Arizona to Oregon, and then she had a headstone, she had a procession, she was in the funeral home for a few days. So it can be very expensive, even if you don't, you know, get all the extra bells and whistles. That's weird to talk about when you're talking about death, but you know, a lot of people do want those things. So life insurance, its primary goal, what it was created for, was so that you don't burden your family after you pass. But now it has evolved so that you can, there's a lot of different ways you can utilize it. And it just gets a bad rap because it's life insurance, and people go door to door because they hire on so many different salespeople without proper training and etiquette. And a lot of people, even me, I mean, I can't even convince some of my closest family members to get life insurance because they have such a bad taste in their mouth. I'm biased because I think it's a very valuable tool to add into your portfolio, not only as, just as a death benefit option, but as an investment portfolio. I use it just for that, to make sure that I'm taken care of, my bills are taken care of, my family's taken care of. So it's definitely a touchy subject. And I don't want to name names, but there's a few companies in town that like hire on really young kids, and they're like, yeah, you can make 10 grand in a week. You just have to go to every single apartment complex and every single house that you can possibly find. And they're not educated about the types of policies or what would work best for the clients. They're just only interested in the money. So I think that's where a lot of companies fall short, is lack of training. And it takes a long time to definitely get the hang of it and learn the nuances of each policy, and which companies are the best fit, and what medical procedures like would be needed for these people. Because you can go online and just get a life insurance policy, but a lot of times you need medicals to be done, blood work, things that have not been taken care of on your medical issues, things like that. So it's definitely it's a personal choice, but there's a lot of benefits to it. And you just have to find the right person that you connect with to make sure that you're getting the correct policy for your needs.
That definitely explains the route that you went of going to a boutique and a more interpersonal relationship. Like you said, you're marrying your insurance agent, because these kind of things, they are tough, and you don't want to have these tough conversations with a mega corporation that you see as faceless, because they don't understand your emotions. Yep. They don't understand your problems. So do you see is this more of a trend within the insurance agency of people going into these more boutique fashions to build interpersonal relationships, or is this something very nuanced to you and you're trying to build this outwards?
So the actual insurance agent is kind of getting wiped off the map. Everything's going digital. There's a couple companies that have a completely eliminated insurance agents altogether. So you would call into a call center and talk to somebody, and they would be licensed insurance agents, but next time you call, you're not talking to Julie, you're talking to George, like there's never that connection with anybody. So it's kind of taking the personal touch out of insurance, which when I first started, that's all I did. I knew each one of my clients. I was 14, I get them cookies, I get them coffee, I'm their friend. And so that's what I loved about insurance, is that I could sit down and talk to Anna about her life insurance policy or her auto insurance policy face to face. And I'm like, okay, this is what this is. This is what this is. And she's like, oh, I have people even today that are 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. And I'm like, has anyone ever explained your auto insurance policy to you? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just go over it to make sure you have the coverages that you need, and any coverages you don't need, we can take off. And they're like, oh, like no one's ever done that before. So they're kind of like eliminating the insurance agent, which I think is a bad idea, just because you're not getting that personal touch. You're not getting, like, I had a client whose house burned down. I went over there. I live here. I went over there and hugged his wife and babysat his dog and made sure he was okay. It's like, but you don't get that with an 800 number. You miss the human connection, which I think it translates to a lot of different industries, not just insurance in our world today.
Yeah, the world is, especially with COVID, a lot of things are going to become very digitized, and eliminating the middleman, the middle woman, or whatever the case is. So I guess that's a benefit to people who can expand out of those horizons and have multiple facets, multiple industries that you're in, which is something like you do. You're also a yoga instructor, and you have your own yoga page, which has a lot of fans. Can you just go into touch about your yoga experience?
So I come from a law enforcement background. So I was very cynical when I first started. I was very cynical, learning about chakras and spirituality. I was raised Christian. I taught Sunday school, so I was very cynical first going in, and something just clicked one day. And I took my yoga teacher training at Sin City Yoga downtown on Main Street. And I was in a class with this girl, Amber, who I'm still friends with today. And I looked down at my toes and it just like clicked. I was like, oh, this is like my body and this is my mind. Like I'm breathing, everything's connected. And it was just probably the most spiritual experience I've ever had. And it wasn't anything but just me. There was no extras, there was no music, there was no mirrors, there was no one touching me. It was just me and my body and my breath. So it was definitely, that's kind of the turning point when I was like, oh yeah, I want to teach. And I mostly specialize in trauma sensitive yoga. So I work with a lot of people that have had very significant things happen in their lives. So they don't like to be touched and they don't like you in their bubble. And yoga's for girls and it's for wimps. Like I work at a couple group homes currently for and rehabilitation centers and things like that. So I want to make it like a really authentic and approachable experience for people, because you walk in and you're like, there's a bunch of shirtless people like chanting and there's incense everywhere, like not bashing that, but like normal people trying to get into it aren't privy to that. They're like hippies, So I think like my law enforcement background really gives me a unique viewpoint of yoga and the like common person's outlook on it, because I was that, and I was like, don't touch me, don't rub oils on me, like I have enough shit going on within here, like I don't need another person in my bubble. So that's kind of where my yoga journey has evolved into, is like a really personal, authentic experience. Like I curse and I giggle and I fall over. I'm definitely not your perfect yoga instructor, whatever. But you relate more with people. It connects you to people, most certainly.
Sin City, yoga is actually about a 20-second walking distance from my apartment. So it's funny that you said
Oh,
that, because
perfect.
I almost considered going to it. My first yoga experience was actually hot yoga at True Fusion about 2 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. And that was the only
Yeah.
class that I actually went to continually for about a year there. There's something about yoga, and like you said, it's very intimate and it's very like freeing. And also I look like a
Mm-hmm.
fool because I was so out of shape in a yoga sense that I could barely touch my toes. It was almost a challenge to myself that I had to get better. And that's basically what yoga is.
Mm-hmm.
It's very introspective, but yet you are
Oh yeah,
connected on like a wavelength sort of sense to all these different people in the room based off the aura and the instructor.
definitely. Yeah. And each instructor has something unique and beautiful to offer. Um, and I always tell people, like, take as many yoga classes from as many different people as you can. And I always get flack from other instructors, like, you need to build your following, like, you need to have people following you from studio to studio and different places you teach. And I was like, I would much rather have them have their own yoga experience than just follow me, because I'm not everybody's cup of tea, like the other yoga instructor down the road is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So I would much rather have them have a good experience than just follow me around.
Yeah, it seems a little bit counterproductive in the yoga sense, because it comes down to the clients, or not the clients, the people who are coming in and practicing yoga. It's the
Yeah.
introspective part, and they're not just your cult like following. And that's kind of what classifies yoga at sometimes, that
Yeah.
it does feel like a little bit of a cult, and in the light that it's very dark when you go in there, and there's all these different
Yeah.
weird bending methods and exercises that you've never done before. But as
Yeah.
you when we first got on this topic, you said that you focus on traumatic patients. I
Hmm.
didn't realize that there was a sort of specification that you could go into as far as being a yoga instructor. Can you touch on that?
Oh yeah. There's a ton of different specifications that you can go into. So I currently hold quite a bit of certifications. I teach pre and postnatal yoga. I teach chair and senior yoga. I teach trauma sensitive yoga. I teach children and children on the spectrum. I find that my best work, what I connect with, is trauma sensitive. So I work with a lot of sexual assault survivors. Just based off my own experiences, I have a lot of connection to them. And we're in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of sex workers that have gone through trauma here. And they're kind of left out of the yoga community, the yoga cult, you know? It's always those soccer moms that go at noon and grab a smoothie afterwards, you know? It's never targeted to the veteran with PTSD that has prosthetics. You know what I'm saying? It's never targeted to the sex worker that may be struggling with some mental issues. It's never targeted to the child on the spectrum that doesn't know how to ground, doesn't know how to calm themselves down. So I like to focus on the demographics that are kind of forgotten or not included in the yoga community, because those are usually the people that need it the most. So through my years of teaching, I've found kind of my group and my people and what I like to teach and where I like to teach. And it's definitely in this space of healing opposed to just physical exercise. It's more grounding techniques. It's more fun. It's more carefree, you know, like I'm not going to make you do 1,000 I might make you do 1,000 push-ups, but we'll laugh while we're doing it. It's not super serious, you know, like that's kind of the space that I've fallen into and that I really, really like.
Yeah, it seems like your theme is being very intimate with with your clients or with the yogis that come in and practice it, because like you're saying about getting a smoothie afterwards, it's become very commercialized and very pop culture-esque. I mean, there's multiple Netflix documentaries about the culture. True Fusion's been expanding out into other cities. There's yoga shops that pop up all over the place that, like you said, it's like the soccer moms that want to go out, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it misses the initial intent of it, which is to better yourself and not as much to go and hang out with your friends, even though, there's something for everybody. But that's what happens when things become commercialized, is that the initial intent usually becomes overlooked and kind of submerged with the amount of volume that gets put through it.
Yeah, I've definitely focused both my businesses on wellness. So I always say, like, I'm a wellness coach for spiritual, mental, physical, and financial wellness. So I'll help you, fix your mind, sit with yourself, meditate for a bit. Like, you need to chill. You need to get your jolting done, like those kinds of things. So sometimes it's a brutal conversation, even for some of my students, because the asana or the physical practice of yoga is only maybe 5% of yoga. And I think I studied in India for a couple months, just learning, the root of yoga. And yoga means union in Sanskrit. So it's union of the mind, body, and spirit. And so the asana practice is basically to burn off any extra energy so that you can go into the meditation, go into the space where you can connect with yourself. Or in yoga, they always call it like source energy. So in Christianity, that's a god. In Hinduism, same thing. It's connecting with something bigger than yourself. And sometimes that is just your own mind and your own quiet and your own body, and like learning how to ground and learning how to overcome these situations that we all go through. I always say in my yoga class, like, we all have shit days, but this teaches us that we can get through it. Like, oh, that yoga pose sucks. Yeah, the splits suck, but in a minute, you're going to get out of it. Like, these things are awful, but you can get through it. I also say, like, where does your mind go when your body starts to feel something similar to discomfort? And it's the same thing in life. Like, is it the fight? Is it the flight? Like, can you observe it and not have this like initial reaction? I'm Irish, so I always have this like fiery, angry reaction to things when they happen to me. So yoga's kind of like chill, girl, like chill, like you can react differently this time. So that's kind of what I focus on in my yoga classes, is like, yoga's not just putting your foot over your head or doing handstand. It's learning how to deal with hard shit in your life and learning how to overcome those and still keeping a little piece of you.
You said you were in India for a few months practicing. How did you end up? How did you end up on the other side of the world?
Well, I definitely thought it was a scam and I was going to get kidnapped. They got a hold of me on Instagram. It's this documentary company. And they were like, oh, you want to go to India and teach and practice and follow the Buddhist pilgrimage across all of India? And I was like, you're going to harvest my kidneys. Like, I'm good, you know? But we did a lot of research and I checked it out and I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go do it. And it was that was my first time out of the country. No, first? I think it was my second, but still, like, that was my first, like, real experience with a different country other than America. And I grew up on Maryland and Swenson, so I've seen some things.
It's pretty much a different country.
But this, yeah, but this was just a completely different experience altogether. It was one of the best and worst times of my life. I have a really bad anxiety disorder. So going there and it's just like noise all the time, noise. So, and people are touching you. I have blonde hair and blue eyes. So they've never seen that in India most of the time. So they're touching you and they want pictures with you and people are stealing from you. I had my purse stolen like 4 times, you know, whatever. So it was just a completely different experience. But the way they practice yoga, they only practice yoga probably they practice twice a day, 30 to 45 minutes, morning and night. But it's mostly based in like Ayurveda, which is like an ancient healing practice. So there's a lot of other things that go into it. Your diet is huge. Your schedule is huge. Your teachings are huge. So you have to study a lot. That's mostly what they focus on, is studying and learning and reading philosophy. One of my favorite philosophers, I'm trying to look for his book, in India is Osho. And he is hilarious. He's like, tell it like it is, a philosopher. He's kind of like Alan Watts and trying to think of a comedian, like all wrapped up into one. Like, he's so funny. And he's like an old, chunky Indian man. He's hilarious. So India was definitely an eye-opening experience and made me a lot more humble and a lot more grateful for what I have. And it taught me a lot about yoga and about myself and about other yogis, because I went with a lot of yogis from America. And just, it's that guru cult worship that we were talking about earlier. And I think that's translated a lot over to the Western culture, whereas in India, it's not really like that. It's not like you worship this one person and that's it kind of thing. And here it's kind of translated into like these super popular yoga instructors, and that's who you go to, and that's like your icon, and you post all over social media. So it's definitely gotten maybe a little lost along the way. So that's the hardest thing for me, was coming back from India and trying to like reintegrate into like the Western yoga culture.
Yeah, especially being out there for a few months, because it's a way of life. And I'm sure their diet out there is very naturally based, probably predominantly fruits and vegetables and homegrown meals, because there is no mass production and consumerism. So yeah, it's just like, it's a complete like inclusive environment, and everyone there is on the same wavelength. And I've never been to India, but I did see the Bikram yoga documentary, and you know, he's from, I'm pretty sure he's from India, and I know he has a little bit of a bad cast and view on him based off the things that happen behind the scenes. But watching that documentary, and you see his beginning days in India, and he gets thousands of people out there, and everyone there is just completely infatuated with the environment. And to see that
Mhm.
to see that firsthand, I can only imagine that you become, I wouldn't say a victim, but you become enticed with the environment as well and become almost the one with it. So it's hard to integrate yourself back into
Yeah.
the Western country where everybody's very privatized and it's not like a giant
Yes.
union together.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was definitely hard to transition and to transition from Indian yoga instructors to American ones back, because I'm always a student. You know, I go to a lot of different studios. I have a lot of different teachers. Indian teachers are brutal. They are brutal. Like I teach very go at your own pace kind of yoga, like do what you like do what feels good. In Indian yoga, it's like, no, you do the posture or you don't do it. If you can't do it, then don't do it. And if you can do it, then you're going to hold it. Like you're going to hold that handstand for 3 minutes. And you're like, no, help me. So it's definitely a different transition from India to here for sure.
Yeah, I always wanted to get back into the yoga scene. It's just like right now, with COVID, it's hard to understand what's going on. There's so many misconceptions that still surround it. You know, we know it's airborne, but does it
Oh
transfer
yeah.
on a surface with yoga mats people are sharing? How have you adapted to this new climate with COVID as far as being a practicing teacher and a student?
So I teach at a lot of different places currently, and we've all taken crazy precautions. So I wear a mask every time I teach. Um, we don't share mats. We don't allow mat rentals or prop rentals or anything like that anymore. You have to bring your own. Everybody has to wear a mask when they're coming in. You have to be separated. And a lot of my private clients have transitioned to, you know, Zoom calls, things like that, which has proved to be pretty productive for them, because then they don't have to carve out, you know, me coming over to their house, carving out that quiet time with their family. They can kind of go into their office, shut the door, and then it's, you know, not as weird. One of my clients, she's a surgeon in town, and she's like, I don't have to clean my foyer anymore because we're doing it on Zoom. And I was like, yeah, like, so that works, you know? So a lot of people have transitioned pretty seamlessly over to a digital way. All my private clients have, and haven't really had an issue. In the studio space, it is a lot different. I prefer to teach outside just because it's more grounding. You know, it's nice, you get some sunshine. So that has helped a lot too. There's a couple facilities that I teach outside, and then if I ever have an option to teach outside, I definitely do that too. I teach at a studio in town called Kintsugi, and they're absolutely fantastic. And they've just upped their cleaning procedures like hundredfold. We wash the floors every day, all the mats every day, you know. So they've taken extreme precautions, as well as all the other studios in town. They're all very, very cautious of not transmitting the disease, being very careful. The instructors, I am not allowed to go around and adjust people anymore, just because, you know, you're like
Mhm.
heavy breathing in their face and touching them. So it makes sense. So it really hasn't been the biggest transition was in the beginning when no one knew what was going on. Like all the studios are closed. Like, can we open? Like, what's going on? That was the biggest transition and mental, you know, detriment that I think most yoga instructors went through this time.
Yeah, it was a shock to everybody, a giant culture shock. A lot of
Oh yeah.
a lot of everyone's routine has been completely fractured and broken in half. And some people have adapted very well to it, and some people are still trying to find their own way.
Mhm.
Do you think that this new format of digital instructing and teaching will continue even once we get back to quote unquote the new normal?
Yes. So I've actually seen a huge spike in people wanting yoga. I don't know if it's, you know, marketing from the media, or, you know, they're just trying to search for some sort of normalcy or grounding. And they really like the digital support platform. It's usually less expensive, and you can connect with a yoga instructor that you can pick from all over the world. So you're not really like, I have a client in India right now, and we do Zoom calls. So you can pick and choose your instructors from all over the world. So you're not limited to just the people within your local area anymore, which I think is fantastic, because then you get to experience different cultures and different ways that you can connect with people. Obviously, like to meet with everybody in person, but I think it's fantastic that people are branching out and finding different ways to connect. Definitely.
Yeah, that is awesome, especially since you have that two-month India stay in your back pocket. You have that sort of international cultural relevance that people are seeking to look for, and it's not just the Western culture and the kind of agenda of capitalizing off of people that people always have in the back of their mind, no matter what you're doing.
Yep. I mean, you could be a doctor and people are still thinking that you're in it for the money. You know what I'm saying? And that was another really hard thing for me to overcome as a yoga instructor, was learning how to set my prices and realizing that money is an exchange of energy, like yogi, like guru hippie talk, but it's true, like that's how I came to terms with it. Because a lot of people are weird about money and sales. So my mentor, his name's Gary, he's in insurance, and he always says, you can do more for them than they can do for you. If they give you $30, you're providing them with a lifetime of knowledge. Like, you are doing way more for them than that money just bought. So that kind of helped me like change my mindset that I am providing a valuable service and I am helping people. So it kind of like takes the guilt off a little bit, and a lot of, especially Western women, have this guilt around money, and it's different. It's a cultural thing. It definitely is. So unconditioning yourself is a work in progress.
I like the confluences that you have throughout your life between, the insurance and yoga and the teachings. They kind of transfer over. Do your clients transfer over as well as your insurance clients go over and become your students?
Yep. So there's a lot of crossover. I have a lot of insurance clients that are students, and I have a lot of students that are insurance clients, because it's a natural way for them to get to know and like me. I'm your yoga instructor, not trying to scam you. I don't care. Like, I'm just trying to help you regardless of any situation. And it's just this natural connection with people. And that's what I do in both my businesses. I connect with people and I help them, financially, mentally, and physically. So there is a lot of crossover between the two, definitely.
You have to be probably the only person in America that's doing both of those, and it's very unique. That's literally what the definition of finding yourself in a free market society is: finding something so specific to you that nobody else can replicate you. So it's really awesome to see.
Yeah, and just coming from like a law enforcement background, I mean, you know me, but sitting here, no one would anticipate that I'm 4'9", like I'm very small and I'm blonde, which also has, its stigmas, whatever. And everybody says I talk like a valley girl, whatever. But I know how to assert myself. I've been in business for 14 years. I've been teaching for 8 years. So it's this confidence that you gain over time by helping people, learning the ropes, and really diving into each of your professions for me. And I had a guy tell me the other day, he was like, you're just a jack of all trades. And I was like, no, not quite. And he was like, you can't have two professions at once and be good at both. And I was like, I beg to differ. Especially because they're so different. But in a lot of ways, they're the same. Maintaining your physical wellness and your financial wellness are constantly works in progress. Always. There's no end goal. And that's like my philosophy. Like, one of my old bosses in insurance, he says like Kaizen, and it's like constantly getting better and constantly growing. So I'm in my 500-hour training right now for yoga, and I'm training to be a portfolio planner for insurance so that I can actually do like asset planning and things like that, and then eventually move into like stock trading and things like that as well for my clients.
That is fantastic. That's big woman energy right there.
Big woman energy. Yeah. It's constantly learning and growing and learning not how to burn yourself out, because American culture, the capitalist society, wants you to burn out. It's this hustle or die mentality. and it's not healthy, and it's extremely detrimental to people. So that's kind of what I've been trying to work on too through this COVID thing as well.
Yeah. At least when you feel burnt out, you have so much knowledge in yoga that you're able to relax. But this also brings up another question. Is it possible to get burnt out on yoga?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. When I first started, I was teaching all the time. I think I taught 6 classes a day. So that's 6 hours of teaching, 6 hours of exercise, and trying to still be like bubbly and happy. And I was like, this is bullshit. I was like, this is some bullshit. Like, this is awful. Like, I'm not happy. My students aren't happy. Like, I'm not giving my best. And that's when I learned how to set my prices. That's another, like, going back to it, like learning your worth so that you don't get burnt out. Because I was only charging per class like $25 or something crazy like that. So in order to sustain myself at all, I had to teach constantly. So learning your worth and like setting your prices accordingly for the type of knowledge that you have and the services that you're providing to people allows you to not get burnt out. And if people don't see, I had 2 people contact me actually today. When I told them my prices, they were like, oh, I'm out. And I was like, okay, like you'll find a different yoga instructor that fits your needs at this time. But my students are out there. You know, I have quite a few students that know my worth and pay me accordingly. So you can definitely get burnt out on yoga. I think you can get burnt out on anything. So learning that balance, and it's not easy. And I still, you know, with all the tools and knowledge that I have, sometimes you just want to like sit on the couch and eat carbs and like binge watch like terrible television because like sometimes those other things don't work. So definitely finding your limits and your boundaries is super important.
That's the burnout idea, and the conception of it was something that I didn't really believe in when I was younger. And it wasn't until recently, about within this last year, that, you know, maybe it's just my age showing or whatever the case is, but I started feeling mentally exhausted and a little bit physically exhausted. So there's different methods and different activities that I go do now and don't feel as much guilt because of that, because of the hustle culture. And Vegas is very
Really?
Vegas is highly built on the hustle culture, especially being on the strip. You know, everything is a what can you do for me right now kind of town. It's instant gratification. I give you a service, you give me money. So you have to look beyond that and not feel this sense of guilt, which is why during this whole pandemic, I say it's okay for people to not, you know, build this new product, because I've always said that this is going to be the biggest rebranding opportunity anybody will get, because, you know, we're all stuck at home. But and on the other side, you know, people feel anxious and feel guilt, and it's okay in these kind of times, because life is like a wave. You got to ride the ups and the downs, and there's plenty of valleys and plenty of peaks to go on through this life.
Oh yeah.
So
and I think you and I have talked about like just the burnout and my medical issues, because when I first started my agency, I was gung-ho, 100% in, and I didn't have anyone working for me at that time, and I got really sick. I have a stage 4 endometriosis, and I was in the hospital every other weekend with surgeries and procedures and blood work and just feeling like crap. And so from there, that kind of taught me like the world's not going to end if you don't come up with a new Instagram graphic right now. You know what I'm saying? It's not to say that procrastination forever is great, but allowing yourself some grace to realize the world isn't going to explode if you don't all do it yourself. And I've had amazing people that have worked for me. My old assistant, Jade, like was a lifesaver. She ran my business and made sure that I was afloat. But that delegation and like learning to let go of that control was probably one of the biggest learning experiences in my career. Because everyone always says, if you want something done right, do it yourself. So I was like, okay, I'll do it all myself. And it's not healthy, and it's not sustainable, and it's pretty toxic. And you learn that you can't rely on anybody, which is also really toxic and, just isolates you. So that was a huge learning curve, to learn how to delegate and give up some of the reins, which I still have a hard time doing, but it's a learning process.
It's tough. It's tough when you have just so much confidence in yourself, and don't get mixed up with, narcissism or, egocentric or anything. Confidence that you can complete this over an amount of time, but the real leaders and the real successful people, they're the ones that were able to delegate and divvy up the different commands that they need throughout their life. So being able to recognize that just puts you on the next step and the next, let's say the next hill or leg up into the world of success. And like I said, like you'd said before, you're taking the 500-hour yoga instructor class. You're getting ready to level up in the insurance and financial field, and then eventually stock trading. And I'm going to throw this one in there. You should look into Bitcoin, because I just have to throw it in there every time, no matter what. My audience probably hates me because I say it every episode, but I'm going to continue to say it. So I think
I'm going to have to. Yeah.
I think this is a good exit point to our conversation. We've been doing this for about an hour. I always ask the two same questions to everybody on the way out, just to kind of see where your mind's at. And I'm very interested on this one. Is the year is 2030. What does the ecosystem of your insurance agency and your yoga instructor career look like?
So that is interesting. I have very high goals, as you can imagine. So for the insurance agency, I want to expand and really hire people, specifically single mothers that have gone through some sort of abuse, so that they can sustain themselves, and they know they can sustain themselves without having to rely on anybody. So I really want to create a community within the insurance industry to hire these women, where they can still take care of their families and have a productive career where they're making a difference. And I think that I could have upwards of 20 to 30 women working for me in my agency. That's kind of where I'm going. So creating an empire of strong, empowered people that can have a career that has meaning and still take care of their kids, because the working mother is kind of looked down on in our society. Like, oh, you're banning your kid, all those stigmas, whatever. And then on the yoga end, I really want to open my own retreat company of some sort. My husband, he's not an official chef, but he should be. And he cooks amazing, delicious vegan food. So I really want to start this sort of retreat where people can come from all different walks of life, especially the people that are kind of not included in the yoga community, and go to these beautiful places all over the world for rest and recuperation and community and connection and this recentering kind of thing. So, and I think that could expand, and I'd have a bunch of yoga instructors there too, because same thing, I want people to be empowered and have a bunch of other amazing instructors that can provide so much good to the world. Get them out there. If they lack the confidence, they're definitely confident. Confidence to get out there on their own. I want to be able to give that to them, because I was so meek and timid before I started yoga teaching, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to speak in front of people. No, that's not going to happen. So it's just showing people that power is in them, and it's just hidden down there a little bit, and you just got to pull it up, and then you're on your way. So those are my two goals for my industry.
The retreat I really like. That's very forward thinking and adapting with the times, because that's something that people need, is the relaxation, but yet a union together and be on the same wavelength and relax. And so my last question and most important one is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
So Las Vegas means home to me. A lot of people shit on Vegas, and I absolutely love Vegas. Vegas means opportunity. opportunity and growth and resiliency. I mean, just like in the landscape itself, you know what I'm saying? Like Vegas is a desert. And out of this desert, we created this like thriving metropolis. I mean, the mobsters did, but you know, whatever, it's still here. Um, but it's this thriving metropolis. I mean, if you go out into the desert, there's all these beautiful flowers that are growing, especially right now. So I wouldn't have the same opportunities if I grew up somewhere else. I went to college when I was 14. I joined the police force when I was 15. I opened an insurance agency. I got licensed when I was 18. Like these kinds of opportunities aren't anywhere else. So I think just this like beautiful, growing organism is what Vegas means to me. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I have traveled to a lot of places and talked to a lot of people, and Vegas is my home. And I couldn't imagine myself growing businesses anyplace else.
Desert rats until full
That's me.
and through. And something else, also something that I've noticed I want to point out is, speaking of women empowerment, I think almost all women that I've had on this show, their answer to that has been opportunity. So I think that's it's a very cool outlook to see that there is a lot of opportunity out here, especially for women. More importantly, because other areas across the world or across the country, it's much lower. So to see that that acknowledgement just puts a much more emphasis that Vegas is growing, and it's growing in a more progressive fashion than it is anywhere else.
Definitely.
And before we go, where can all the listeners get connected with you, social media accounts, websites, and whatnot?
So for my yoga, which is probably my most popular social media account, it's Danielle McCafferty Yoga, and that's on Instagram, Facebook, and my website. And then for insurance, it's the McCafferty Agency, and that's online, or DM Insurance LV on Instagram. So either way, I'm there. I always say, like, call me, beat me if you want to reach me. Kim Possible is going to like sue me for infringement rights.
That's funny. I'll be sure to put that in the show notes so that everybody can find you, make it accessible. Danielle,
awesome.
I thank you for this opportunity. This was very eye-opening, and to see someone that's found their specific niche in the world, it's very encouraging, to say the least.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's been a great conversation. And once this is all over, we'll have to grab a coffee or something, hang out.
Yes, please. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.